If you can master those conversations, you're going to be a winner in so many different ways. On this episode of Giant TV, I sit down with an incredible woman, AmyK Hutchens, who's an award-winning international speaker, has been a business owner for over 20 years, and is a master communicator in tough conversations, and has so many magical phrases that you can use for your own scenario. And her personality is off the charts. And you're going to love this conversation. There's going to be a ton of takeaways. So grab your pen and paper and let's go sit down with AmyK Hutchens. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Giant TV. This is Paul Hitchcock. I'm the president and founder of Giant Jacks Media. Really fired up to have AmyK Hutchens here. AmyK, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah. Amy's all about communicating. Has been an owner for 23 years and an international award-winning speaker. I know we've talked a lot offline. You have traveled the world speaking. Fantastic. Yeah. And I want to jump right into this because we're talking about tough conversations, AmyK, going into the new year. And what do we need to know here?
Oh, there's nothing. Nobody's going to have a tough conversation in 2023. Like, our work here is done, right?
Yeah.
No, I think, so there's a couple of facts. So let me just be geeky for a second.
Yeah.
One of the things that we now know from research is that on average, we avoid a tough conversation 6 months to 2 years. Ooh. So if you just think about all the angst, the stress, the frustration, the anger that you're totally delaying because you're not solving your problem,
yeah,
right?
It's
and you're
horrible.
Experiencing all that. But then there's also the financial cost, which I find very intriguing. We have figured out that somewhere between $7,500 and $10,000 is the financial impact of an avoided conversation
at a business, at a business
level.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, that's just on average. So there's going to be things that are way more expensive, and then the longer that you delay it, the greater the cost.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what are some of the fun stories you might have that can lead us into handling tough conversations, you know?
So I've been blessed. So for 23 years, I've been doing this, and I get the privilege of traveling all over the world. So I'm in New York City. This is a few years ago, pre-pandemic. I'm in New York City. I pick up a coaching client, CEO of a very well-known firm. So we're just going to change his name because everybody would recognize it. So we're just going to call him Marty. And I'm on coaching call number 3. And Marty says, "Hey, AmyK, do you have 5 minutes?" Now, Paul, there's only 2 things that happen when a coaching client says, "Hey, AmyK, do you have 5 minutes?" It's either marriage or kids. And I want to get right out of the bat here. I'm not a therapist, right?
Right.
So I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And so my internal thought was, okay, I'm going to put $50 on marriage, right? And then he says, "I've been married for 38 years. And I was like, excuse me, way too long. I've been married for like 18 years. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I won the bet. And then he says, and it's been pretty miserable. Oh. And I was like, oh, like then your heart sinks, right?
Yeah.
So then you're like, oh, somebody's hurting, somebody else is hurting.
Right.
But then he says, AmyK, can you fix her?
Can you fix her?
I was like, no, I can't fix her, but I'm coaching you. And so I said, Marty, let me just ask you a question. Who are you up to being? Like, who do you need to be worthy of a best friend? Who do you need to be the kind of guy where your wife is still chasing you around the bedroom, you're chasing yourselves around the globe because you're doing amazing things? Like, who are you up to being? And what was so great is over the course of that tough conversation with himself, he calls me up and he's like, AmyK, you're not going to believe this. I'm having the best relationship of my life. And I was like, yes. And this is what I love about what I do, is that sometimes the tough conversations are with me, myself, and I.
Right.
You have to lead yourself well first before you can lead others.
That's a great, yeah, no, I was going to say that's a great thing to look, because I don't think a lot of people are self-aware of who they are, right? I mean, do you find that when you're working with people, they're just not self-aware of what they're doing to add to the issues?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just that we don't know how. That's the other thing is I work with, and I say this without blowing smoke, I work with extraordinarily talented, smart, strong leaders who also still need to get the bigger, better, bolder conversations with themselves and others. And it's a skill set. Yeah. And so it's just learning how to do it so that you can be more effective.
Yeah. Well, how do you do it when you're talking to somebody like that? I mean, you're in a business environment.
And does it often cross over into personal stuff? And how do you handle
all
it?
all the time.
It
And
does, yeah.
so a lot of it is, for me, it's the increasing self-awareness, honing in on your own empathic intelligence. And that's like a big buzzword until I say it's really about you showing up as a witness to somebody else so that that other person feels seen, heard, and understood. And so a lot of the language that I use is communicating to connect. So you can still be upset with somebody and need to establish a boundary or higher expectations, but it's the how you have that conversation. So again, like, let's just say that you've got a low performer in your company, like nobody's ever dealt with that, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we tend to wait. So let's connect all the dots. So let's say, Paul, I work for you. I'm not performing very well. You get frustrated with me one day, but you're like, I don't have time to deal with AmyK. So then I do it again, like 2 weeks
Right.
later. I'm
Right.
disappointed in the performance. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with her, but I got too many other fish to fry. So finally, 6 months later, right, on average, you finally lost your cool, and all you end up doing is reaming me out.
Right. Right.
That's what
Right.
most of us are used to doing
Mm-hmm.
or experiencing. But what if you actually took the time to say, okay, the life that I desire, the team that I want, it's on the other side of a tough conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So the sooner that I have it, and I have it constructively, the better it's all going to be for them and for me.
Right.
So you sit down and you prepare and you say, okay, AmyK, how might we make you a more integrated, successful team player?
Mm-hmm.
And then you walk me through this incredible conversation of here's your strengths, here's what's working, are we aligned on your objectives, what's going to be a benefit to you when you meet him, here's a benefit to the team. Now let's talk about some behavioral changes. Let's talk about some expectations that I have for ensuring that you're successful. Well, I'm going to get a lot more committed and engaged to improve my behavior in that conversation than if you wait to just ream me out.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I'm just going to be candid here because I called you the other day because at my own business, we, had a flounder, we had a mistake, and I just really took to heart what you told me. And I think I dropped an F-bomb on the phone calling you. So, got your attention, but you're like, and what you said was going into a tough conversation, because as a team member made a mistake that impacted a client, you said, the first thing you said is you want to tell them this isn't about blame. Right. You get that out of the way up front. It's not about blame, but we need to figure out the process. I thought that was awesome. What is that? Is that a typical way to approach it? A conversation?
Yeah. And I think that the bad habit that we've been taught in business is that we're going to get together and we're going to be like, whose fault is this?
Yeah.
And then
right,
from that frame, we try to solve it. And I'm saying, let's flip it around to, hey, everybody on this team has a significant role to play. We've all accepted assignment for the care and management of the project, the people, our clients. So where do we fix this collectively? How do we ensure, like, if a mistake happens, how do we ensure that this doesn't happen again? Now, if it's a repeated offense, then you can go have a conversation with that individual to raise expectations. But at the beginning of a mistake, what we want to say is, this is not a lame blame game. This is, hey, how do we all play better going forward? And therefore, you get greater commitment and improved performance. Because what we know, and this is the geek in me coming out, what we know is that if somebody feels defensive or reamed out, their behavior and performance actually goes down instead of improves.
I can see that. And you mentioned empathic listening, which is always interesting to me because I grew up around a huge Catholic family, learned about my family sitting around the kitchen table, where my aunts and uncles were drinking coffee and talking, and I was there listening. And there was a lot of discussion, dialogue, conversation. And to me, it's a lost art today in many ways. And that when you mention empathic listening, what it really is that about? And can you become an empathic listener if it's not in your DNA?
Yeah, no, this is really good. So one of the things that I think that is fascinating in our 90-mile-an-hour world is that when we have conflict, what we end up doing is our instinctive survival takes over. So you say something and I'm like, yeah, well, then you. And then what we end up doing is we escalate the conflict, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So an empathic listener says, and from a mature perspective, I have my own stories, I have my own sentiments, but that's going to be a different part of the conversation. Like I'll wait to, right? I'm going to actually listen. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I heard you. And it's not parroting, but it is making sure that I heard you correctly. then I'm going to validate your experience. So I might say, hey, Paul, you sound really frustrated with that individual. Like you've dropped the F-bomb. It sounds like you're really upset because you really care about your clients. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God, you totally get it. Right? Like, AmyK, yes, you understand. Whereas if I immediately jump in with, well, my agenda, I'm not giving you the opportunity to feel seen, heard, and understood.
Right.
And that's so important that the first words out of my mouth are about connecting with you, not my own personal agenda.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
And then I can say to you, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now notice what I'm doing. I'm not being condescending.
Right.
I am saying, hey, you know what, Paul, it makes total sense that you're upset about this. I completely get that you care about your clients and this is unacceptable performance. I get that. Now you're like, okay, now I feel really understood. Now I can go back and I can say, okay, when you go to talk to this individual, let's not drop any more F-bombs. But now you're susceptible to my, to my feedback, right? Now you're like, okay. But this is the art and science of empathic listening and communication, because you're going to be far more open to behavioral change if you first feel seen, heard, and understood instead of me making you feel defensive.
So true. So true. And so AmyK, why do people bring you in at the business? So I know you work with a lot of incredible companies and why do they bring you in and what do you do when you get in there?
So all of us, every single one of us, in order to have greater success, we need to be a more effective communicator. And we have to do it with ourselves. So there's self-leadership. We need to do it with others. We need to do it with all of our stakeholders. And so to me, when you can elevate your own confidence, you advance your career, you advance your relationships, and you get more of what it is that you want. And I mean that in a beautiful way, in the sense that when you learn how to communicate confidently, your business grows and your relationships get healthier. And that's why I show up, because I actually care about you and your life.
Mm-hmm. So you're going in and you're working with the owners of the businesses.
I am, or an executive team. And I do one-on-one coaching. We have masterminds for leaders in an executive team. We have a whole sales thing, because I believe sales happens one conversation at a time. But at the end of the day, I'm a true believer that the more effective you are in communicating, the more beautiful your life is. So the quality of your conversations is going to be reflected in the quality of your life.
Yeah, no, that absolutely true. I subscribe to that. Now, okay, magical phrases. I got to ask you about this because you're known for your magical phrases. I know people, and I've written some down. I have them right here. So what are those about?
So I started off in sales, and I started off, and the reason I kind of joke about that is I started off as an elementary school teacher, and then I actually went into sales. So I was in charge of Europe, Asian, and Australian sales for $1 billion consumer product company. And one of the things that I noticed early on is that I'm not a fan of scripting, but a back pocket brilliant one-liner can change the entire tone and tenor of a conversation. It can completely course correct it. And of course, like all of us, some of my magical phrases were learned the hard way. Like in hindsight, what could I have said a little bit more effectively? So again, I've got hundreds of them, but I'll share just a classic example. So most of us are having a conversation and somebody will say, oh, you're going to be fine. Oh, you're going to be fine. Or, oh, it's going to be fine. And the truth of it is that person doesn't believe that it's going to be fine. Or maybe it's not going to be fine. Maybe there really is something that's horrific or tragic or so challenging that it's not going to be fine. And they don't believe it. And so it feels very condescending when you say it. I like to flip it into the magical phrase of, you can face this.
Ah, okay.
So when somebody's dealing with something difficult, replace you're going to be fine with, hey, you can face this. You can face whatever happens.
God, I love that.
What's fantastic is you just gave that person an entirely different sense of, oh, I can. Their resiliency just elevated, and you haven't been pedantic. So if I said to you, like, maybe something's going on in your life, and I say, hey, Paul, there's one thing I know for sure. You can face this. And then if it's appropriate, you could say, whether it's a familiar or a more intimate relationship, you could say, and I'm here to face it with you. And that's very different in a conversation, right?
Huge. Yeah.
I'll give you another one. I'll give you one of my top 5.
I love that.
Oftentimes leaders will talk in absolutes. Oftentimes parents will talk in absolute. So whether you're talking to a direct report or you're talking to one of your kids, we tend to say, like, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. And all that person hears is 100%. Oh, Paul's pissed off, right? so they get very defensive. They're like, okay, I'm going to gird my loins now. When you say a part of me and you fill it in with whatever you're feeling, you completely remove that dynamic and you create a much less defensive response in the person. So I could say to you, hey, you know what? A part of me is really concerned, or a part of me is frustrated, or a part of me is angry, and a part of me also understands. But now notice what I'm doing though. I'm creating all this open space for still respect, an opportunity to solve the problem, to move out of defensiveness. If it's an intimate or a personal relationship, I've left room for love. And so the entire tone and arc of that conversation will change versus me crossing my arms and saying, I'm upset.
Yep.
I'm angry.
Yep.
Right. So these are just magical ways to communicate more effectively and get more out of the people that you're playing with in the sandbox.
I think it's incredible. You're going to laugh because I'm smiling, because just this morning, my damn kids, I have 4 of them, we're not doing their chores, right? The kitchen's a mess. The dog's not being taken care of. And I was going off on texting this morning. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to use this. A part of me is upset,
Okay,
it works. I think it works.
So let's combine this with another one. So a really great one, whether it's customer service or parenting, this is great in customer service and parenting, is would you be willing, and then give them guided choices. So if with your kids, so that you're going to set an expectation for tomorrow. So we're going to go to one of your 4 kids and you're going to say, okay, would you be willing to feed the dog, unload the dishwasher, or like unpack the groceries from the car, whatever it is. Now, notice what I've done is I've given them guided choices. They're much more likely to choose one than if I just say, hey, go feed the dog, right? They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. But if I say, would you be willing? And I give them 3 choices, then they're likely to pick one. And then they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, I'm going to unload the dishwasher. And you're like, yes, 1 down, 3 to go, right? And so these are the magical ways that you start to change the conversation. And I say this without manipulation, but just with a way to live your life. You get more of what you want.
Oh, absolutely. So you want some kids? Can I give you some kids? You got to come on. Come
on. I'm the cool aunt. I'm the cool aunt. I will borrow your children. We'll have a wonderful time. And then I'm going to send them back to you.
I love it. Well, AmyK, you and I have known each other. We could talk forever about this. This is awesome. Thanks for doing this. I want to have you back. Thank you, everybody, for listening here. But just wonderful stuff. And if you want to get in touch with AmyK, wherever you're watching this video, because we stream everywhere, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, we may be on TikTok with this thing, but her information is going to be around the video. And AmyK, what would you like them to get in touch with? What do you want them to see with you?
Yeah, so we're a community with a lot of free resources. So one of my core values is generosity. So whether you go to amyk.com and grab our conversation prep planner, or whether you go to shegetsit.com and you get all the free tools and resources there for our women leaders, we invite you to come in, and I give out content every week for free if you join our community, just the way that I play. So come learn how to be a great communicator with us.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, AmyK.
Thanks so much, Paul.
All right.